Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say enough good things about the great work that you have done with the study questions, with Puzzle Day, with everything else. I really, really appreciate your good work on this. Today we'll do Chapter 6. You have an option this time. You can answer the study questions, or if you prefer, delete the study questions and write me a 100-word summary of the chapter. Just don't leave out any plot points. Okay? Chapter 6, Cory Doctorow's little brother. Believe it or not, my parents made me go to school the next day. If only I'd fallen into feverish sleep at 3 in the morning. But at 7 the next day, my dad was standing at the foot of my bed, threatening to drag me out by the ankles. I managed to get up. Something had died in my mouth after getting my eyelids shut, and into the shower. I let my mom force a piece of toast and banana into me, wishing fervently that my parents would let me drink coffee at home. I could sneak one on the way to school, but watching them slip down their black gold while I was drag-assing around the house getting dressed and putting my books in my bag, it was awful. I've walked to school 1,000 times, but today it was different. I went up and over the hills to get down into the Mission. Everywhere there were trucks. I saw new sensors and traffic cameras installed at many of the stop signs. Someone had a lot of surveillance gear lying around, waiting to be installed at the first opportunity. The attack on the Bay Bridge had been just what they needed. It all made the city seem somewhat more subdued, like being inside an elevator, embarrassed by the close scrutiny of your neighbors and the ubiquitous cameras. The Turkish coffee shop on 24th Street fixed me up good with a go cup of Turkish coffee. Basically, Turkish coffee is mud, pretending to be coffee. It's thick enough to stand a spoon up in, and it has way more caffeine than the kiddie pops like Red Bull. Take it from someone who's read the Wikipedia entry. This is how the Ottoman Empire won. Maddened horsemen fueled by lethal jet black coffee mud. The Ottoman Empire, of course, was the Turkish Empire. They conquered a lot of Asia during right up until they broke up at the end of 1918. They were on the bad guy side in World War One. I pulled out my debit card to pay, and he made a face. No more debit, he said. Huh? Why not? I paid for my coffee habit on my card for years at the Turks. He used to hassle me all the time, telling me I was too young to drink the stuff. And he still refused to serve me at all during school hours, convinced I was skipping class. But over the years, the Turk and me have developed a kind of gruff understanding. He shook his head sadly. You wouldn't understand. Go to school, kid. There's no surer way to make me want to understand than to tell me I won't. I wheedled him, demanding that he tell me. He looked like he was going to throw me out, but when I asked him if he thought I wasn't good enough to shop there, he opened up. The security, he said, looking around his little shop, with its tubs of dried beans and seeds, its shelves of Turkish groceries. The government, they monitor it all now. It was in the papers. Patriot Act 2, the Congress passed it yesterday. Now they can monitor every time you use your card. I say no. My shop will not help them spy on my customers. My jaw dropped. You think it's no big deal, maybe? What is the problem with government knowing when you buy coffee? Because it's one way they know where you are, where you've been. Why you think I left Turkey? Where you have government always spying on the people is no good. I moved here 20 years ago for freedom. I no help them take freedom away. You're going to lose so many sales, I blurted. I wanted to tell him he was a hero and shake his hand, but that was what came out. Everybody uses debit cards. Maybe not so much anymore. Maybe my customers come here because they know I love freedom too. I'm making a sign for the window. Maybe other stores do the same. I hear the ACLU will sue them for this. You've got all my business from now on, I said. I meant it. I reached into my pocket. I don't have any cash though. He pursed his lips and nodded. Many people say the same thing. It's okay. You give today's money to the ACLU. The ACLU is an American group, a private group that looks out for Americans' constitutional rights and civil liberties. If you haven't heard of them, look them up. They are good people. In 2 minutes, the Turk and I exchanged more words than we had in all the time I'd been coming to his shop. I had no idea he had all these passions. I just thought of him as a friendly neighborhood caffeine dealer. Now I shook his hand when I left its store. I felt like I had joined a team, a secret team. I'd missed 2 days of school, but it seemed like I hadn't missed much class. They'd shut the school on one of those days while the city scrambled to recover. The next day had been devoted, it seemed, to mourning those missing and presumed dead. The newspapers published biographies of the lost, personal memorials. The web was filled with these capsule obituaries, thousands of them. Embarrassingly, I was one of those people. I stepped into the schoolyard, not knowing this, and then there was a shout, and a moment later there were 100 people around me, pounding me on the back, shaking my hand. A couple girls I didn't even know kissed me. They were and they were more than friendly kisses. I felt like a rock star. My teachers were only a little more subdued. Mrs. Galvez cried as much as my mother had and hugged me 3 times before she let me go to my desk and sit down. There was something new in the front of the classroom, a camera. Miss Galvez caught me staring at it and handed me a permission slip on smeary Xerox school letterhead. The board of the San Francisco United School District had held an emergency session over the weekend and unanimously voted to ask the parents of every kid in the city for permission to put closed-circuit TV cameras in every classroom and corridor. The law said they couldn't force us to go to school with cameras all over the place, but it didn't say anything about us volunteering to give up our constitutional rights. The letter said that the board was sure they would get complete compliance from the city's parents, but that they would make arrangements to teach those kids whose parents objected in a separate set of unprotected classrooms. Why did we have cameras in our classrooms now? Terrorists, of course, because by blowing up the bridge, terrorists had indicated that schools were next. Somehow, that was the conclusion that the board had reached anyway. I read this note 3 times, and then I stuck my hand up. Yes, Marcus? Miss Galvez, about this note. Yes, Marcus? Isn't the point of terrorism to make us afraid? That's why it's called terrorism, right? I suppose so. The class was staring at me. I wasn't the best student in school, but I did like an in-class debate. It reminds me of you guys a little bit. They were waiting to hear what I'd say next. So aren't we doing what the terrorists want from us? Don't they win if we act all afraid and put cameras in the classrooms and all of that? There was some nervous tittering. One of the others put his hand up. It was Charles. Miss Galvez called on him. Putting cameras in makes us safe, which makes us less afraid. Safe from what? I said, without waiting to be called on. Terrorism, Charles said. The others were nodding their heads. How do they do that? If a suicide bomber rushed in here and blew us all up? Miss Galvez, Marcus is violating school policy. We're not supposed to make jokes about terrorist attacks. Who's making jokes? Thank you, both of you, Miss Galvez said. She looked really unhappy. I felt kind of bad hijacking her class. I think this is a really interesting discussion, and I'd like to hold it over for a future class. I think that these issues may be too emotional for us to have a discussion about them today. Now let's get back to the suffragists, shall we? So we spent the rest of the hour talking about suffragists and the new lobbying strategies they devised for getting 4 women into every congressman's office, to lean on him and let him know what it would mean for his political future if he kept on denying women the vote. Suffragists were women who fought for women to vote. You know, but before 1921, women were not allowed to vote in America. It's shockingly recently, like right less than 100 years ago. It was normally the kind of thing I really liked, little guys making the big and powerful be honest. But today I couldn't concentrate. It must have been Daryl's absence. We both liked social studies, and we would have had our school books out and an IM session up seconds after sitting down, a back channel for talking about the lesson. I'd burned 20 Paranoid Xbox discs the night before, and I had them all in my bag. I handed them out to people I knew were really, really into gaming. They'd all gotten Xbox Universal or two the year before. They'd all gotten an Xbox Universal or two the year before, but most of them had stopped using them. The games were really expensive and not a lot of fun. I took them aside between periods at lunch and study hall and sang the praises of the Paranoid Xbox games to the sky. Free and fun, addictive social games with lots of cool people playing them from all over the world. Giving away one thing to sell another is what they call a razor blade business. Companies like Gillette give you free razor blade handles and then stiff you by charging you a small fortune for the blades. Printer cartridges are the worst for that. The most expensive champagne in the world is cheap when compared with inkjet ink, which costs all of a penny a gallon to make wholesale. Razor blade businesses depend on you not being able to get the blades from someone else. After all, if Gillette can make $9 on a $10 replacement blade, why not start a competitor that makes only $4 selling an identical blade, an 80% profit margin, the kind of thing that makes your average business guy go all drooly and round-eyed? So razor blade companies, like Microsoft, pour a lot of effort into making it hard and or illegal to compete with them on the blades. And remember, they're using blades as a metaphor here. It could be anything, computer games, computer parts, and so forth. In Microsoft's case, every Xbox has had countermeasures to keep you from running software that was released by people who didn't pay the Microsoft blood money for the right to sell Xbox programs. The people I met didn't think much about this stuff. They perked up when I told them that the games were unmonitored. These days, any online game you play is filled with all kinds of unsavory sorts. First, there are the pervs who try to get you to come out to some remote location so they can go all weird and Silence of the Lambs on you. Silence of the Lambs is a movie about a kidnapper murderer. It's pretty good if you ever get a chance to see it, but watch it with a grown up, okay? It's pretty serious stuff. But it's awfully good. Silence of the Lambs. Then there are the cops, who are pretending to be gullible kids so they can bust the pervs. Worst of all, though, are the monitors, who spend all their time spying on our discussions and snitching on us for violating their terms of service, which say no flirting, no cussing, and no clear or masked language which insultingly refers to any aspect of sexual orientation or sexuality. I'm no 24/7 horn dog, but I'm a 17-year-old boy. Sex does come up in conversation every now and then. But God help you if it came up while you were gaming. It was a real buzzkill. No one monitored the paranoid Xbox games because they weren't run by a company. They were just games that hackers had written for the hell of it. So these game kids loved the story. They took the discs greedily and promised to burn copies for all their friends. After all, games are most fun when you're playing them with your buddies. When I got home, I read that a group of parents was suing the school board over the surveillance cameras in the classrooms, but that they'd already lost their bid to get a preliminary injunction against them. A preliminary injunction is when the courts don't know if they're going to make something illegal, but they stop it anyway because it might be bad. End of section 1. See you for section 2.